The Vex invasion decimated Earth without warning. It began with lights in the sky that most thought were unusual aurora displays or meteor showers. News channels briefly covered the strange phenomenon before communications started failing. First, satellite networks went dark. Then power grids collapsed across entire continents. By the time military forces mobilized, it was already too late. The alien ships appeared over major cities simultaneously, massive crystalline structures that seemed to absorb sunlight rather than reflect it. They hovered silently for exactly 12 hours before the attacks began. Nobody understood why they waited. Perhaps it was some alien tradition before conquest, or maybe they were scanning for threats. Whatever the reason, those 12 hours of terrified waiting became the last normal moments humanity would experience for a very long time. When the attacks finally came, they were methodical and precise. The Vex targeted military installations. First, using weapons that disintegrated matter at the molecular level. Bases that should have been hidden from any known technology were somehow located and destroyed within minutes. Defense systems proved useless against vessels that could phase through solid matter at will. "They know everything about us," whispered Colonel Huang into his final transmission from Asian Command Headquarters. "It's like they've been studying us for centuries." His message cut off mid-sentence as his bunker, buried beneath a mountain, was reduced to dust. Survivors described the aliens as tall figures, with skin that reflected light like polished stone. They moved with unnatural precision through the ruins of human cities, seemingly unbothered by Earth's atmosphere or gravity. They weren't interested in communication or surrender terms. Any humans they encountered were eliminated without hesitation. Resistance. Efforts formed quickly but fell just as fast. A coalition force assembled from surviving military units managed to down a single Vex vessel near what remained of Berlin. Their celebration lasted exactly 6 minutes before overwhelming retaliation wiped them out completely. The wreckage was collected by the aliens before researchers could examine it. Within 3 weeks, most organized military resistance had been crushed. Civilian populations fled to remote areas, mountain ranges, dense forests, underground subway systems, anywhere that might offer temporary shelter. But the Vex were thorough, deploying smaller scout ships and drone-like hunters that tracked heat signatures and movement patterns. In northern Canada, a group of survivors led by Park hid in abandoned mining tunnels. "They're not just killing us," she told the frightened civilians huddled around emergency heaters. "They're changing the atmosphere. You can taste it, something metallic. They're terraforming Earth while they hunt us down." She was right. The Vex had begun altering Earth's environment even as the invasion continued. Massive structures sprouted from the ocean floors, pumping unknown compounds into the water and air. Temperature patterns shifted dramatically. Arctic ice began melting at unprecedented rates, while equatorial regions experienced sudden freezing conditions. By the 6th week, what remained of global monitoring systems estimated that over 99% of humanity had been eliminated. The last emergency broadcasts advised any survivors to hide, not fight. There would be no rescue, no reinforcements, no miracle weapons. Earth had fallen. The Vex established command centers on every continent, their crystalline architecture rising from the ruins of human cities. They believed their victory complete, their conquest total. Their scanners detected no organized resistance, no military threats, no technology capable of challenging their dominance. But deep beneath the shifting Arctic ice, something ancient and nearly forgotten stirred to life. Their facility built during the height of global tensions decades earlier, not as a weapon of war against other humans, but as humanity's final insurance policy against extinction. Its existence had been hidden from public records, known only to a handful of world leaders who had long since perished in the invasion. The facility, codenamed Frost Guardian, housed technology far beyond what was publicly known to exist. As surface temperatures fluctuated and radiation levels spiked from alien terraforming, automated systems compared the data against extinction-level event parameters. Multiple conditions were met simultaneously. Without human authorization, the facility's artificial intelligence initiated emergency protocols that had never been meant to be used. Power systems that had lain dormant for years rumbled to life. Backup generators activated, drawing energy from geothermal sources deep within the Earth. Environmental systems began clearing stale air from sealed chambers. Medical equipment ran diagnostic sequences and prepared nutrient formulas. In the heart of the facility, 500 cryogenic chambers began their carefully programmed revival sequence. Each contained a soldier, volunteers who had undergone extensive genetic modifications and enhancement procedures before being placed in suspended animation. They represented the best of humanity, selected not just for physical abilities, but for psychological resilience and unwavering resolve. Inside each chamber, frozen blood slowly began to warm. Modified heart muscles twitched as circulation restored. Enhanced neural networks sparked with renewed activity as consciousness began its gradual return. The facility's systems worked methodically, knowing that rushing the process would risk losing the precious cargo it had protected for so long. As the Vex continued their transformation of Earth's surface, they remained completely unaware of what was awakening beneath the ice. Their scans, advanced as they were, couldn't penetrate the specialized shielding that surrounded Frost Guardian. For the first time since their arrival, a threat to their dominance was emerging, not from space or from any expected source, but from humanity's own foresight and determination to survive at any cost. The revival would take time, but time was now the only advantage humanity had left. Above, the aliens continued their work, confident in their complete victory. Below, in frozen darkness, Earth's last defenders began to wake. Facility Polar Shield wasn't built to be comfortable, it was built to last. 2 kilometers beneath the Arctic ice, where the cold itself provided natural protection, the massive underground complex had been carved out of bedrock in total secrecy. The nations of the world, usually divided by politics and borders, had come together just once to create this final safeguard against extinction. The last line in the sand, as General Choi had called it during the facility's completion ceremony, that was over 30 years ago. Since then, Polar Shield had been maintained by rotating skeleton crews and increasingly sophisticated automated systems. Most of the world's leaders who approved its construction had died of old age, taking knowledge of its existence with them. Budget files were buried under layers of classification, maintenance reports hidden within unrelated military exercises. It wasn't just a secret facility, it was a forgotten one, but it was never meant to be remembered. It was meant to activate when everything else had failed. The main chamber stretched nearly half a kilometer in length, a cathedral-like space hewn from stone and lined with metal. Temperature controls kept it at precisely 2 degrees Celsius, cold, enough to minimize energy use, but warm enough for the critical systems to function reliably. The chamber's walls glowed with soft blue emergency lighting that had automatically activated when the facility's AI detected changes in Earth's atmosphere and radiation levels. Row upon row of cryogenic pods filled the chamber, each one a self-contained medical miracle. 500 in total, arranged in perfect lines like soldiers at attention, which in a way they were. Each pod housed a single volunteer, suspended between life and death in a state that normal humans couldn't survive for more than a few hours. These weren't normal humans. Back when the program began, the volunteers came from elite military units worldwide, special forces operators, combat pilots, intelligence agents, the best their countries had to offer. Selection criteria were impossibly strict. Physical attributes were just the beginning. The program required specific genetic markers that made candidates compatible with the enhancement procedures. Of the thousands screened, only 500 qualified. "You won't live to see what you're fighting for," Dr. Kang had told them during orientation. "If you're ever awakened, it means civilization as we know it has ended. You'll be fighting for what remains, not what was." None of them backed out. Fona. Modifications began with genetic editing for enhanced muscle density and bone strength. Then came the surgeries, neural implants to increase reaction time, artificial organs that could filter toxins, vision enhancements that could see beyond the normal spectrum. The pain was excruciating, but the volunteers endured. While politicians debated climate change and economists worried about markets, these men and women were being transformed into something beyond human, a contingency plan nobody wanted to. Pod 437 contained a former naval commander who had survived 3 days adrift in the Pacific. Pod 128 held a mountain warfare specialist who once carried a wounded teammate through a blizzard for 12 hours. Pod 293 housed a combat engineer who could build or destroy anything with minimal tools. Each pod represented not just genetic, potential but tested human will. The facility's central AI, codenamed Guardian, monitored Earth constantly through hidden sensors scattered across the globe. It watched radiation levels, atmospheric composition, seismic activity, and thousands of other variables. Its primary directive was simple: determine if humanity was facing extinction, and if so, initiate revival protocols. For decades, Guardian watched wars, natural disasters, and political upheavals. None triggered the extinction parameters. The Vex invasion was different. Within days, Guardian registered unprecedented changes. Communications networks collapsed globally. Radiation signatures, unlike anything in its database, appeared in major population centers. Atmospheric composition began shifting towards something that couldn't support human life. When the last organized military transmission was detected, Guardian made its final analysis. Humanity, critical endangerment level, probability of extinction. Without intervention, 99.7%. The parameters had been met. Throughout the facility, long-dormant systems hummed to life. Backup power generators deep within the Earth's crust activated, channeling geothermal energy through superconducting cables. Medical systems ran diagnostics, preparing nutrient formulas and synthetic blood supplies. Weapons caches were unlocked, armor suits powered up. Everything proceeded according to protocols written decades earlier by people now dead. Inside each cryogenic pod, the revival process began with microscopic precision. First, nanomachines repaired cell damage caused by long-term freezing. Then, specialized compounds neutralized the cryoprotectants that had prevented ice crystal formation in tissues. Heart and lung function was gradually restored, followed by higher brain activities. Pod 001 was the first to show signs of consciousness returning. Inside, eyelids flickered as rapid eye movement indicated dreaming, the first dreams in decades. Fingers twitched slightly as neural pathways re-established connections. The pod's occupant, once a quiet intelligence officer known for unprecedented pattern recognition, was beginning the journey back to awareness. Guardian watched over each pod, adjusting revival parameters individually. Some needed higher oxygen levels, others required additional stimulation to prevent muscle atrophy. The AI had been designed with one purpose: to ensure these modified humans returned at full capacity, ready to face whatever had triggered their awakening. Outside, the world continued changing under alien control. Inside, humanity's last defenders began stirring from their long sleep. They would wake to a world they wouldn't recognize, to fight an enemy they hadn't known existed. They had volunteered anyway, accepting that unknown future as their duty. In Pod 231, a hand formed a fist, the first conscious movement in 30 years. Humanity's counterattack was beginning. Commander Kim's eyelids felt heavy, like they were made of stone. The first breath hurt, a burning sensation as lungs that hadn't moved in decades suddenly expanded. Her vision swam with blurry shapes and bright lights. Then her neural implants activated, and everything changed. Information flooded her enhanced brain. Tactical displays overlaid her vision, showing facility status, team conditions, and worst of all, the current state of Earth. She gasped, not from the physical pain of revival, but from what she was seeing. "No," she whispered, her voice raspy, "from disuse. It can't be." But the data didn't lie. Humanity nearly extinct. Earth's atmosphere being transformed. Alien presence, global. The neural feed showed her images captured by the facility's few functioning external sensors. Landscapes transformed beyond recognition. Alien structures where cities once stood, and skies tinted an unnatural purple. The cryochamber's lid fully retracted, releasing a cloud of cold vapor. Kim sat up slowly, muscles trembling as they remembered how to work. Around her, other pods were opening. In the pod to her right, Captain Lee blinked rapidly, his eyes adjusting to light they hadn't seen in 30 years. His face contorted as the same information reached his implants. "They killed everyone?" he asked, voice breaking. "Almost everyone," Kim corrected, swinging her legs over the side of the pod. Her modified body was already adapting, cells regenerating faster than normal humans. Guardian says there might be scattered survivors in remote areas, but all major population centers are gone. Across the chamber, Major Park was already standing, testing his limbs with methodical movements. His military discipline hadn't faded during the long sleep. "How long do we have before they detect this facility?" "Unknown," Kim answered, accessing more data through her neural link. "Guardian has kept us shielded so far, but once we leave, we'll be exposed." One by one, the soldiers emerged from their pods. Some stumbled, others wept when they received the neural updates. All of them had known this day might come. It was why they had volunteered. But facing the reality was different from the abstract possibility. "We've trained for this," Kim reminded them, her voice growing stronger. "Maybe not this exact scenario, but we prepared to fight when everything else failed." The conditioning took hold. Faces hardened as military training overrode. Personal grief. They had all left behind families, friends, lives, all now gone. There would be time to mourn later if they survived. Guardian's artificial voice echoed through the chamber. "Revival sequence complete. All subjects show optimal neural and physical function. Weapon systems are online. Tactical briefing will commence in 10 minutes. The soldiers moved with increasing confidence toward the preparation area. Their bodies, enhanced beyond normal human limits, shook off the effects of cryostasis, faster than should have been possible. Muscles designed to be twice as dense as normal regained their strength. Nerve endings modified for faster reaction. Times re-established connections. Circulatory systems with artificial enhancements pumped oxygen-rich blood to brains that could process information at unprecedented speeds. In the armory, they found their equipment waiting. The weapons looked both familiar and strange, designs they had trained with but refined over the decades by automated manufacturing systems. Rifles that could change ammunition types with a thought command, body armor that hardened on impact, communication devices embedded directly into their tactical gear, linked to their neural implants. "The technology evolved while we slept," Park observed, examining a rifle with appreciation. "We evolved too," Kim reminded him, flexing her hand. Beneath the skin, enhanced muscle fibers and reinforced bones gave her strength that would have been impossible for her younger self. "Guardian, show us what we're fighting." Holographic displays activated, showing detailed images of the aliens. The Vex stood nearly 2 meters tall, with crystalline exoskeletons that reflected light in hypnotic patterns. Their movements were fluid but mechanical, suggesting both biological and artificial components. "Their outposts are concentrated here," Kim said, pointing to a map showing a structure 50 kilometers from their location. "It appears to be a monitoring station with minimal defenses. They're not expecting resistance." "Because they think they've killed us all," Lee said, his voice hard. "Exactly." Kim loaded her weapon with practiced efficiency. "That's our advantage. Guardian has prepared transport vehicles in the lower bay. We move in 6 hours after final. Medical checks and equipment calibration." The soldiers prepared methodically, checking and rechecking their gear. Through their neural network, they shared tactical assessments and formation plans without speaking. The technology that had seemed so experimental 30 years ago now felt like a natural extension of themselves. As Kim surveyed her team, she felt something unexpected: hope. They were outnumbered and facing an enemy with technology far beyond humanity's previous capabilities. But they had surprise on their side, along with bodies and minds designed specifically for impossible situations. 3 hours later, they gathered at the transport bay. Specialized vehicles designed to operate in the transformed environment waited for them, another gift from the foresight of those who had built this facility. "We are humanity's last soldiers," Kim told them, her voice steady. "But we are not its last hope. There are survivors out there. Every Vex we kill improves their chances. Every installation we destroy buys them time. We may not win this war today, but we start fighting back. The bay doors opened for the first time in decades, revealing a tunnel leading upward through the ice. The alien-controlled surface waited above, a world transformed, but still theirs to reclaim. "For Earth," Kim said simply, and led them toward the light. The mountains had changed since they went to sleep. Jagged peaks now had smooth, glossy sides where the Vex had harvested minerals. Forests were gone, replaced by fields of alien vegetation that glowed faintly blue at night. But the deep caves remained, and that's where team leader Han established their first forward base. "They don't like the caves," Han explained, examining 3D maps through his neural display. "Their sensors get confused by the mineral deposits. We can use that." The super soldiers had split into 5 strike teams after leaving Facility Polar Shield. Each team had a specific mission focus: sabotage, intelligence gathering, rescue, weapons development, and command. Han led the sabotage team, 12 enhanced soldiers who could move faster, hit harder, and endure more than any normal human. Their terraforming equipment is the priority, Han told his team, pointing to glowing markers on their shared neural map. "Each of these pumping stations is changing our atmosphere. Destroy one, and we buy time. Destroy all of them, and the Vex have to start over." The first attack came at dawn. Han's team moved through mountain passages that the aliens avoided, using their enhanced vision to navigate in near darkness. Their modified lungs processed the thinning oxygen more efficiently than normal humans could, allowing them to operate in the changing atmosphere. Every advantage helped against an enemy that controlled most of the planet. The pumping station rose like a twisted silver tree from what had once been a lakebed. Crystalline tubes pulled unknown chemicals from deep underground and released them as purple mist into the air. Only 2 Vex stood guard. Why post more when there had been no resistance for months? "Remember, 20 seconds maximum," Han whispered, though he didn't need to speak aloud. Their neural link carried his thoughts to the team. Plant charges. And retreat. No heroics. They struck with precision born from decades of training and genetic enhancement. The guards fell before they could signal an alarm. Explosive charges were planted at key structural points, identified through their tactical visors. The team was halfway back to the caves when the station erupted in blue flame. Across the continent, Lieutenant Sun's intelligence team made their move on a Vex communication hub. Sun had been a language expert before volunteering for the program, and her neural implants now contained specialized code-breaking algorithms. While her team created a diversion, she slipped into the crystalline structure's central chamber. The alien technology pulsed with energy as she connected her neural interface. Pain shot through her skull as her enhanced brain processed alien data streams. It was like trying to read a book while riding a roller coaster, but her modified nervous system adapted, filtering the information flood into something usable. "They don't know we exist," she reported back to base camp, her thoughts traveling through their secure network. "They think the first attack was some kind of mechanical failure, and they're vulnerable. They need specific atmospheric conditions. Our air is still too oxygen-rich for them in some regions." This intelligence shaped their strategy. Han's team targeted terraforming equipment in areas where the atmosphere remained closest to Earth normal. Sun's team continued gathering intelligence, building a map of Vex weaknesses and movements. The aliens' confusion grew with each successful strike, their confidence shaken by an enemy they couldn't see or understand. But the true breakthrough came from the most unexpected source. Soldier Mina hadn't been a scientist before the program. She'd been a music teacher with exceptional hearing, who happened to have the right genetic markers for enhancement. Her auditory modifications were more extensive than the others, giving her perception of sound frequencies beyond normal human range. During a raid on a smaller Vex outpost, she noticed something strange. "They react to certain sounds," she reported, excitement breaking through her military bearing. "When our explosives went off, they didn't just respond to the threat. They physically recoiled from a specific frequency in the blast." The weapons development team immediately began testing her theory. They discovered that the Vex's crystalline biology was vulnerable to specific sonic frequencies that literally shattered their molecular structure. Within days, they had modified their existing weapons to emit targeted sound waves, along with conventional firepower. The first test of the sonic weapons came during a larger assault on a major Vex processing center. The aliens deployed defensive units in force, expecting conventional attacks. Instead, they faced weapons that made their bodies vibrate at their natural frequency until cracks appeared in their crystalline armor. "They're falling apart," shouted one soldier, as a group of Vex literally disintegrated under the sonic assault. The aliens retreated in confusion, never having encountered a species that could identify and exploit their physical weaknesses so quickly. What had begun as isolated resistance became a coordinated counter-offensive. The super soldiers adapted their tactics with each encounter, their enhanced bodies and neural networks processing battlefield data faster than their enemies could respond. For the first time since the invasion, the Vex were forced to reallocate resources to defense rather than terraforming. Their communication channels filled with reports of attacks from an unknown enemy. Their leadership demanded explanations for how humans, supposedly extinct, could suddenly threaten their operations. "They're scared," Han told his team after reviewing data from Sun's latest intelligence gathering. "They've never faced anything like us. They expected conventional warfare, not enhanced humans who can think and fight like them, but with intimate knowledge of Earth." The super soldiers used the planet itself as a weapon. They lured Vex units into unstable mountain passes and triggered avalanches. They sabotaged terraforming equipment to release chemicals harmful to the aliens rather than humans. They studied wind patterns to release sonic disruptions that traveled for miles, creating no-go zones for the invaders. As weeks passed, more Vex outposts fell silent. The aliens consolidated their forces, abandoning outlying areas to strengthen central strongholds. Earth's atmosphere began to stabilize in regions where terraforming had ceased. "We're taking back our world," Han said, as they watched a sunset, the first natural orange sunset they'd seen since awakening from their mountain outpost. Not all at once, but piece by piece. The war was far from over, but something had changed. The invaders who had believed victory complete now found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't understand, humans who had engineered themselves specifically to survive and fight back against extinction. The super soldiers weren't just reclaiming territory, they were reclaiming humanity's future. The final battle for Earth's command center was unlike anything the super soldiers had trained for. The Vex had built their planetary headquarters on the ruins of what had once been Geneva, its crystalline spires rising like twisted fingers above the devastated landscape. After months of guerrilla warfare, Commander Kim had finally gathered enough intelligence and firepower for a direct assault. "They've called their ships back to defend the command center," Kim told the assembled strike teams. "They finally understand they're losing." The battle lasted 3 days. The Vex deployed weapons that could vaporize normal humans instantly, but the super soldiers' enhanced reflexes and protective gear allowed them to advance steadily. Their sonic weapons created chaos among the alien ranks, shattering crystalline bodies and disrupting communication networks. By the 3rd day, they had penetrated the central control room, where the Vex leadership, taller, more ornate creatures than their soldiers, attempted a final stand. "For Earth," Kim said simply, and they unleashed their full arsenal. When the last Vex commander fell, silence descended for the first time. The soldiers stood amid alien technology, their enhanced bodies pushed beyond even their modified limits. Many were injured, some severely, but their accelerated healing had already begun the repair process. "We've won this battle," Kim announced, looking at the tired faces of her soldiers. "Now we begin the harder work of reclaiming our world." Major Park approached with a data tablet showing a global map. "The remaining Vex forces are in disarray. Without central command, they've defaulted to defensive positions around their ships. No coordinated counterattacks detected." "And the bunkers?" Kim asked, her voice softening slightly. Park nodded. "We've confirmed locations for 12 civilian preservation bunkers. Guardian had their coordinates all along, waiting for this moment. This had been the last, most closely guarded secret of Project Polar Shield. While the super soldiers slept, beneath the Arctic ice, Smaller facilities around the world had protected carefully selected civilians, scientists, engineers, doctors, teachers, farmers, people with skills essential for rebuilding civilization. Unlike the soldiers, these civilians had been kept in rotating cryostasis, with small groups awake at any given time to maintain the facilities and each other. "Send the activation signal," Kim ordered. "Tell them it's safe to emerge." The first bunker they reached was buried beneath what had been the Rocky Mountains. As the massive doors ground open for the first time in months, Kim felt an unfamiliar tightness in her throat. The super soldiers had been modified for combat, their emotions carefully calibrated for tactical efficiency. But seeing the faces of ordinary humans, children among them, stirred something they hadn't expected. A grey-haired man stepped forward, blinking in the sunlight. "Is it over?" he asked simply. "The fighting is," Kim replied. "The rebuilding is just beginning." As more bunkers were opened across the globe, humanity's survivors emerged to a transformed world. The Vex terraforming had changed landscapes, altered weather patterns, and left alien structures dotting the planet. Rather than attempting to reverse all these changes, Major Park proposed a different approach. "We should understand it and use it," he explained while examining a Vex atmospheric converter. "Their technology is centuries beyond ours. We can repurpose it to heal Earth faster than we could with our own methods." In the weeks that followed, Park led teams of soldiers and civilian scientists in studying captured Vex technology. The soldiers' neural implants proved invaluable, allowing them to interface directly with alien systems that the unmodified humans couldn't access. They discovered that much of the terraforming could be reversed by recalibrating equipment, rather than destroying it. "They built these converters to remove oxygen," Park explained to a group of environmental scientists. "We've reprogrammed this, one to restore it instead. The process will take years, but it's faster than waiting for forests to regrow." Meanwhile, Commander Kim focused on establishing secure habitats for the returning civilian population. The super soldiers' enhanced strength allowed them to clear rubble and construct shelters with minimal equipment. Their bodies, designed to withstand extreme conditions, could work in areas still affected by alien environmental changes, where normal humans would quickly sicken. "We were created to be weapons," Kim told a young engineer who asked about their modifications. "But it turns out we make decent construction workers too." The integration of human and alien technology advanced rapidly. Solar panels were augmented with Vex energy crystals, multiplying their output. Communication systems incorporated alien transmission methods, allowing contact between scattered human settlements. Medical teams adapted Vex scanning technology to treat injuries and illness. Sergeant Jin, who had specialized in communications before the program, made perhaps the most important breakthrough. By studying the command center's transmission equipment, she found a way to access the Vex interstellar network. "They come from a system approximately 30 light-years away," she reported. "And there are more of them, much more." The invasion force was just their first wave. Under Jin's direction, they modified the alien equipment to send a message, not in Vex language, but in a universal format that any spacefaring species would understand. The message contained images of Vex ships being destroyed, super soldiers standing victorious, and finally a simple warning: "Earth is protected." "Will they come back?" asked a child during a community meeting in one of the new settlements. Jin knelt down to eye level with the boy. "They might try, but they'll find something they didn't expect, humans who are ready for them, and not just us." She gestured to her fellow soldiers. "All of you too. We're learning from them, getting stronger." As the first year of reclamation ended, new communities had sprung up around repurposed Vex structures. Gardens grew in soil, enriched by modified alien compounds. Children played in parks, where defensive installations once stood. The super soldiers, originally created only for war, found new purposes as protectors, builders, and teachers. "We were made for a dying world," Commander Kim reflected, watching a sunset that had gradually returned to its natural colors as the atmosphere healed. "But we get to live in a reborn one. Earth would never be the same as before the invasion, but perhaps some thought it could be better. a world where humanity remembered how close it had come to extinction and remained vigilant against the darkness between stars.